I was marched off to a prison joining other people, and then next morning we were taken to the railway station, into cattle trucks, and off to our first destination. We never knew where we were going, but on arrival, as soon as the doors were opened, the assessmen who were standing on the platform with horsewhips immediately started screaming and shouting. Heraus, heraus, schneller, schneller, beating us brutally. Then they had another method of getting rid of us. We were all assembled outside the roll call. The assessment would arrive and select people that he decided were clapped out to be murdered. The gassing was only 50 or so yards away, open already, and each man that was chosen was described as beschränkt. Beschränkt in German means limited, but it's a rather derogatory term. And since the victims knew what's going to happen to them, they were very, very reluctant to oblige. Then they were beaten brutally, so much so that blood was pouring from their head and bodies. But they had to get into the van. Then we heard them saying the last prayers. The van was shot, never seen our friends again. It's only years afterwards I found out that Chelmno, which I mentioned to you before, that was not far away from these camps. And that's where most likely the victims were taken there and burned or buried.
Auschwitz was originally an old Polish army barracks, but was changed in April 1940 into a prison for 10,000 political prisoners. Rudolf Hirsch, who had served in both Dachau and Sachsenhausen in the 1930s, was given the position of Commandant of Auschwitz, and was the main innovator of the extermination of the Jews. Modelled on other concentration camps that Hirsch had served in, even adopting the cynical Dachau motto of Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free, Auschwitz became renowned for its brutalisation of its inmates. Over half of the 23,000 prisoners first sent to Auschwitz were dead within 20 months. But Auschwitz remained a remote backwater in Nazi ideals up until October 1941, when construction on a much larger concentration camp complex began on the site known to the Poles as Birkenau. Birkenau was designed to hold the slave labourers who were to work in a new industrial complex that IG Farben Siemens had constructed. Birkenau, or Auschwitz II, was designed to hold more than 100,000 inmates, was not designed for the Jews originally, but for the Soviet prisoners of war, who were being captured by the German army in their thousands. Rudolf Hirsch was also experimenting with extermination using Zyklon B, an industrial cleansing gas, in order to kill Soviet prisoners of war in the Auschwitz I crematorium. Next to the crematorium was the mortuary, which the SS used as an improvised gas chamber, dropping the Zyklon B through a hatch in the roof. The cyanide powder caused asphyxiation and death of everyone within the mortuary in under 20 minutes. With an influx of Jewish prisoners to Birkenau in the summer of 1942, new crematoria were planned in Auschwitz II, but Hirsch had these redesigned into huge gassing chambers, which were underground to avoid suspicion from the new inmates and the Allies. These crematoria would be central to the extermination of the Jews and were later installed in concentration camps across Europe. And so the labour camps were transformed into death camps.
In May 1943, the few of us that survived were sent off to Auschwitz-Birkenau, one of the worst camps on earth. I've been in many, many camps which were terrible, but Auschwitz-Birkenau was excelled itself in brutality. It was the lowest of the lower in the pits. It was the largest camps I've ever been in. The greatest mass murder took place there. On arrival, we were taken into a barrack, forced to get undressed, hand over all our clothing, and when totally naked, we were searched thoroughly. every crevice of our body was carefully examined, just in case we got any valuables. Of course we didn't have any valuables. All we had was plenty lice, fleas. And then we were tattooed, and each one of us got a number. And so then we were taken to a barrack joining other prisoners, and the block leader told us that let this be a warning to you, boys. He said, do you think Auschwitz is a holiday camp? I can assure you not. Nobody survives here. Can you see these crematory chimneys over there? You could see them a mile away because there's smoke belching out day and night. He said, that's where you're all going to end up. Nobody survives here. This pleasant thought, we then allocated different shelves, 3 shelves, and rough wood, no mattresses, nothing like that, and we were skin and bone. Each shelf would have roughly 5 people more, depending how crowded the barrack was. And in a way that was an advantage. More people the better, because at least if you were lying against somebody next to you in close proximity, you had a bit of warmth, unless he died overnight, and of course he missed that warmth. And every so often an announcement would be made that Jewish people don't go to work this morning. So very soon we were ordered to get undressed, stand naked, and wait for Dr. Mengele or his associate to come along and decide who's going to die. And then eventually he arrived, he looked at us facially, then he looked at us, then asked us to turn around, don't know what for. And once he wrote down a number, you were destined to die. On one such occasion, a colleague of ours, my age, he felt very sorry for himself because he was so chosen. He said, why was I picked? I don't look any worse than you do. We comforted him with the only truth that we understood. Your suffering is finished now. Ours will go on a bit longer, and we will end up the same way. At the bottom of my camp was the main ramp, where all new arrivals came in. And you could see how people are being marched off, sometimes parents holding the young children by the hand, occasionally you could also see a baby in their arms. They didn't have a clue what is going to happen to them. And even if I had a chance to speak to them, it would have been fruitless. Wouldn't have helped them either. They couldn't save themselves, no way. And we saw these people arriving day in, day out, day in, day out. 80% approximately of each transport would be taken straight to the gas chambers. And only a small number, what they considered to be able-bodied, would be allowed a temporary reprieve, because according to the German own records, the average survival rate in Auschwitz was 12 weeks. Some died within days and some died within weeks or so. I was there almost 18 months, from May 1943 till approximately sometimes November 44.